I'd go off on week training camps to Leeds, which isn't too far away from Nottingham. And I'd go there with all these lads that were all my age, and we'd all be incredibly excited because we were taking a week out of school. And I was one of the first kids in my year at school to get a mobile phone because I had to ring my mum back, and I'd always forget. And I'd ring her on the last day. So I can remember having a Nokia 3210, that famous phone, be playing Snake all the time on it. And we'd go to these training camps, and the first night we'd have pizza and Dr. Pepper, and we'd watch films, and it was amazing. We'd just do gymnastics, and that really helped me fall in love with gymnastics, I think, and the sport. And you know, a lot of the things that I was also, when I was a kid, I was a very fussy eater as well. And when you go to these gymnastics competitions, and in those early years, particularly when we were going for that period where we were on the come up and, you know, we were going to these competitions in some interesting countries, you kind of had to eat what you were given. So that very quickly I learned that, right, either I'm going to eat this food that I don't like, or I'm going to be starving and I'm going to really struggle in the competition. So it had a really positive impact on me, just kind of being braver and going out of my comfort zones, I think, a lot. Traveling on my own without my parents. I got so used to traveling. Like to this day, when I go to the airport, sometimes I'll rock up with my family, or if I travel with Connie, that she'll get really annoyed because I'll be like, oh, it's all right, we can get there with like 45 minutes to go. We'll get the flight, because I'm so casual about flying because I did it so much as a kid. And these competitions we used to go on, we went on a training camp once to Israel, and it was a 2-week training camp, and I've got no idea who did the recce or the due diligence for this training camp, but they obviously hadn't seen any pictures of the gym. They've just been sold that this was the National Training Centre in Israel. It's going to be brilliant for 2 weeks, and we flew out to Israel, and the first few days were amazing. We went to see the Wailing Wall. We went to the Dead Sea. Obviously, the Dead Sea is full of salt, and you can float in it, and I just thought, all right, I can't be bothered to shower. I'm going to wait till we get to the hotel, and then I'll take a shower. Walk onto the bus. Everyone's waiting. I get on the bus, and all the older lads are like, oh, Sam, what are you doing? I was like, what? And like, I looked in the mirror and the window, and in my reflection, I was all white and I was covered in salt because I don't have a shower. So I had to run back and have a shower. And we got to this place, and it was like a massive campsite. And we go and have dinner, and we walk to the gym, and it's nighttime, and it's the first time we just go to have a little look around the gym. We're walking with all the coaches. It's a full squad. The whole GB senior team and junior team, we're going to be there for 2 weeks, and we get to this gym, and it's a basketball court. And it's literally a basketball court with bits of gymnastics equipment around the outside. And there's a pommel horse. There's some bits of conditioning equipment. There's an old set of parallel bars. There was a vault in the middle of a gymnastics court. It didn't have any landing mats. The landing was a trampoline. So you do vault onto a trampoline. We're all looking around. You can see the coaches are kind of scratching their heads, trying to kind of pointing fingers at whose fault it is for booking this 2-week trip to Israel, which must have cost a lot of money. And then to get to the gym where the high bar was, you had to walk outside. So you had to put your shoes on, go outside to this little gym. There was a high bar and a rings, and then there was a vault in a doorway. And if you wanted to do vault to the pit, to the foam pit, you had to run on the gravel car park outside. It was brilliant. It was unbelievable. And we spent 3 or 4 days there. And eventually we came home because our parents had been ringing up the coaches because we could hear fighter jets flying over our heads, bombing the Gaza Strip. We rang home and we're telling our parents, and we're having the best time ever. And all of our parents are like corresponding with each other going, this is not okay, this is not safe, you've got to bring them home. So after 4 days, we got sent home. Trips like that we used to go on, and they were brilliant. They were character building, you know, and you were learning about new cultures and different people, and all the way through, the common thread was gymnastics. So I'd meet, you know, kids from different countries from all around the world, but the language of gymnastics, you know, the performance, they didn't need to speak English. We could communicate through that. And traveling the world was amazing. I remember I went to Kiev in Ukraine when I was 13, I think. 13 or 14, we went to Kiev, and Sergey took me there, and you know, we went out there, and I remember the first night we get to Kiev, and Sergey's like, right, we've got to go and train, boys. There's no official training, but I'm going to find us a gym. So he's ringing round his friends, trying to find us a gymnastics club in Ukraine. We get a taxi, we get to this gym. It's a really nice gym, And there's one man in there and one little kid on the high bar, right? And we're doing our roll sequences on floor. We're just doing a little bit of basics. And this guy starts properly like shouting at this kid. And we're thinking, wow, this is scary. And he's doing a somersault off the high bar. He's doing a straight back somersault. And he starts smacking his feet on the bar, on the steel bar. So he's doing a straight back. He's coming too close, whacking his feet on the bar. And he's shouting at this kid, and we're looking at Sergey like, Sergey, what's going on? And Sergey's going, don't look at him, boys. Don't worry, it's normal. It's normal. I'm like, what? And all of a sudden, he takes him around the corner. We just hear like this tap coming on, and this kid got his face under the tap. He comes back out, gets back on the high bar, smacks his feet again. It was unbelievable. So all of these things that we're seeing on these trips and these different cultures, and you know, that was obviously not okay, but we were, to see that as a 13, 14-year-old, it opened your eyes to the world. And I guess one of my favourite trips that I ever went on towards the end of my career was we went to Japan, me and Sergey. And it was brilliant. It had been funded through my Sky Sports scholarship scheme. So I'd organised for me and Sergey to go out to Japan on a 2-week training camp, just me and him, in the preparation and the build-up to Rio 2016. So this was at the end of 2015, and I'd always been fascinated with Japan ever since I was a kid, and Sergey had brought a VHS tape back from one of his friends that had been coaching out in Tokyo, and I used to watch this videotape of these Japanese gymnasts on repeat. I'd been obsessed with Japanese gymnastics and the Japanese culture, and organised this training camp. And we went out there and we went and trained at a university club first. And we took the train through Tokyo. Can't speak any Japanese. Me and Sergey. Sergey's English is interesting at the best of times. So we're trying to navigate our way through the Tokyo subway system. We eventually make it to this university. The coach picks us up from the train station. We get to this gym, and it's a dead small gym. It's tiny. It's probably a third the size of Nottingham's gym. And all the equipment's rusty. And what I couldn't believe was that there was 3 of the current World Championship winning team from 2015 training in that gym. 3 of the world champions were in that gym. And they didn't have the best equipment. It was all the P-bars were rusty. It was a dead small gym. They had an incredible coach. One of their coaches was a guy called Hiroyuki Tomita. He was one of my idols and my heroes growing up. And I realised in that moment, going back to the Sergey thing, it's not necessarily, you could have the best gym in the world and the best equipment. It's the knowledge that's in that room. And going back to Israel, you know, we were there for 3 or 4 days, but we all had really good training sessions. I remember having great training sessions there in Israel, because it's the knowledge in the room and pulling yourselves together and figuring out, how can we work in this environment? And that was a really good life lesson for me, and something that gymnastics massively taught me. After that, you know, I would always try, and if I had conversations with young kids, I'd say, look, you're in this brilliant gym, it's perfect. Some people, there are kids that train all around the world that don't have the facilities like this, so really embrace it, appreciate what you've got. And that training camp to Japan that was an eye-opener for loads of reasons. I know that, like I'd said, gymnastics in Japan, for me, at the time, they were the best in the world. And Kohei Uchimura was, you know, he was on his run. He'd not lost in 4 or 5 years. And the reason they were so good, and I think people back home, gymnastics fans will find this interesting, was they were just going to a different level. Like their video analysis in their national centre, they had like a train track with a camera on it that could like move up and down, left and right, the whole way around the gym, and they would film everything. And when we were kids and we'd started getting some success as Great Britain, and the Japanese national team approached us and said, they approached the GB national coaches and said, we'd like to come on a training camp to Lilleshall with you. And our coach was like, wow, the Japanese team want to come and train with us. And they'd come, and it'd only ever be the juniors. They'd never bring the seniors, and they'd film every single thing that all of us GB lads were doing, and we weren't allowed to film them. That was the rule at the time. And in that session, I hadn't realised that they were filming everything I'd been doing for 2 weeks in that gym. And on the last day, the man that runs that gym had asked me to come in, and he'd shown me Mount Fuji. And I got to see there were 2 guys working on TV cameras, on computer screens. And it was video footage of me that they were analysing from the 2 weeks. And what he'd really been doing was showing me just what they've got at their disposal.